Okay, here we go. We're going to start reading in chapter 23 of Acts. Paul looked straight at the council and said, "My fellow Israelites, my conscience is perfectly clear about the way in which I have lived before God to this very day." The high priest Ananias ordered those who were standing close to Paul to strike him on the mouth. Paul said to him, "God will certainly strike you, you whitewashed wall. You sit there to judge me according to the law, yet you break the law by ordering them to strike me." The men close to Paul said to him, "You are insulting God's high priest." Paul answered, "My fellow Israelites, I did not know that he was the high priest. The scripture says, 'You must not speak evil of the ruler of your people.'" When Paul saw that some of the group were Sadducees and the others were Pharisees, he called out in the council, "Fellow Israelites, I am a Pharisee, the son of Pharisees. I am on trial here because of the hopes I have that the dead will rise to life." As soon as he says this, the Pharisees and Sadducees started to quarrel, and the group was divided. For the Sadducees say that people will not rise from death, and that there are no angels or spirits, but the Pharisees believe in all three. The shouting became louder, and some of the teachers of the law who belonged to the party of the Pharisees stood up and protested strongly. "We cannot find a thing wrong with this man. Perhaps a spirit or an angel really did speak to him." The argument became so violent that the commander was afraid that Paul would be torn to pieces. So he ordered the soldiers to go down into the group, get Paul away from them, and take him into the fort. That night the Lord stood by Paul and said, "Don't be afraid. You have given your witness for me here in Jerusalem, and you must also go and do the same in Rome." The plot against Paul's life. The next morning some Jews met together and made a plan. They took a vow that they would not eat or drink anything until they had killed Paul. There were more than 40 who planned this together. Then they went to the chief priests and elders and said, "We have taken a solemn vow together not to eat a thing until we have killed Paul. Now then, you and the council sent word to the Roman commander to bring Paul down to you, pretending that you want to get more accurate information about him. But we will be ready to kill him before he ever gets here." But the son of Paul's sister heard about the plot. So he went to the fort and told Paul. Then Paul called one of the officers and said to him, "Take this young man to the commander. He has something to tell him." The officer took him, led him to the commander, and said, "The prisoner Paul called me and asked me to bring this young man to you, because he has something to say to you." The commander took him by the hand, led him off by himself, and asked, "What do you have to tell me?" He said, "The Jewish authorities have agreed to ask you tomorrow to take Paul down to the council, pretending that the council wants to get more accurate information about him. But don't listen to them, because there are more than 40 men who will be hiding and waiting for him. They have taken a vow not to eat or drink until they have killed him. They are now ready to do it and are waiting for your decision." The commander said, "Don't tell anyone that you have reported this to me," and he sent the young man away. Paul is sent to Governor Felix. Then the commander called 2 of his officers and said, "Get 200 soldiers ready to go to Caesarea, together with 70 horsemen and 200 spearmen, and be ready to leave at 9 o'clock tonight. Provide some horses for Paul to ride and get them safely through to Governor Felix." Then the commander wrote a letter that went like this: "Claudius Lysias, to His Excellency Governor Felix, greetings. The Jews seized this man and were about to kill him. I learned that he is a Roman citizen, so I went with the soldiers and rescued him. I wanted to know what they were accusing him of, so I took him down to their council. I found out that he had not done a thing for which he deserved to die or be put in prison. The accusation against him had to do with the questions about their own law. And when I was informed there was a plot against him, at once I decided to send him to you. I have told the accusers to make the charges against him before you." The soldiers carried out their orders. They got Paul and took him that night as far as Antipatris. The next day the foot soldiers returned to the fort and left the horsemen to go with him. They took him to Caesarea, delivered the letter to the governor, and turned Paul over to him. The governor read the letter and asked Paul what province he was from. When he found out that he was from Cilicia, he said, "I will hear you when your accusers arrive." Then he gave orders for Paul to be kept under guard in the governor's headquarters. Now we're up to 24, and we have 28, so we have 4 chapters left. I'm going to keep reading. 5 days later, the high priest Ananias went to Caesarea with some elders and a lawyer named Tertullus. They appeared before Governor Felix and made their charges against Paul. Then Paul was called in, and Tertullus began to make his accusation as follows: "Your Excellency, your wise leadership has brought a long period of peace, and many necessary reforms are being made for the good of our country. We welcome this everywhere and at all times, and we are deeply grateful to you. I do not want to take up too much of your time, however, so I beg you to be kind and listen to our brief account. We found this man to be a dangerous nuisance. He starts riots amongst Jews all over the world and is a leader of the party of the Nazarenes. He also tried to defile the temple, and we arrested him. If you question this man, you yourself will be able to learn from him all the things that we are accusing him of." The Jews joined in this accusation and said that all this was true. This is Paul's defense before Felix. The governor then mentioned to Paul to speak, and Paul said, "I know that you have been a judge over this nation for many years, and so I am happy to defend myself before you. As you can find out for yourself, it was no more than 12 days ago, that I went to Jerusalem to worship. The Jews did not find me arguing with anyone in the temple, nor did they find me stirring up the people, either in the synagogues or anywhere else in the city. Nor can they give you proof of the accusations they now bring against me. I do admit this to you. I worship the God of our ancestors by following the way which they say is false. But I also believe in everything written in the law of Moses and the books of the prophets. I have the same hope in God that these themselves, namely, that all people, both the good and the bad, will rise from death. And so I do my best always to have a clear conscience before God and people. After being away from Jerusalem for several years, I went there to take some money to my own people and to other sacrifices. It was while I was doing that they found me in the temple after I had completed the ceremony of purification. There was no crowd with me and no disorder, but some Jews from the province of Asia were there. They themselves ought to come before you and make their accusations if they have anything against me. Or let these who are here tell what crime they found me guilty of when I stood before the council. Except for the one thing I called out when I stood before them, I am being tried by you today for believing that the dead will rise to life. Then Felix, who was well informed about the way, brought the hearing to a close. When the commander, Lysias, arrives, he told him, I will decide your case. He ordered the officer in charge of Paul to keep him under guard, but to give him some freedom and allow his friends to provide for his needs. Paul before Felix and Drusilla. After some days, Felix came with his wife Drusilla, who was Jewish. She sent for Paul and listened to him as he talked about faith in Christ Jesus. But as Paul went on discussing about goodness, self-control, and the coming day of judgment, Felix was afraid and said, You may leave now. I will call you again when I get the chance. At the same time, he was hoping that Paul would give him some money, and for the reason he would call for him often and talk with him. After 2 years have passed, Porcius Festus succeeded Felix as governor. Felix wanted to gain favor with the Jews, so he left Paul in prison. Chapter 25. Paul appeals to the emperor. 3 days after Festus arrived in the province, he went from Caesarea to Jerusalem, where the chief priests and the Jewish leaders brought their charges against Paul. They begged Festus to do them the favor of having Paul come to Jerusalem, for they had made a plot to kill him on the way. Festus answered, Paul is being kept a prisoner in Caesarea, and I myself will be going back there soon. Let your leaders go to Caesarea with me and accuse the man if he has done anything wrong. Festus spent another 8 or 10 days with them and went to Caesarea. On the next day he sat down in judgment court and ordered Paul to be brought in. When Paul arrived, the Jews who had come from Jerusalem stood around him and started making serious charges against him, which they were not able to prove. But Paul defended himself. I have done nothing wrong against the law of the Jews, or against the temple, or against the Roman emperor. But Festus wanted to gain favor with the Jews, and so he asked Paul, Would you be willing to go to Jerusalem and be tried on these charges before me there? Paul said, I am standing before the emperor's own judgment court, where I am being tried. I have done no wrong to Jews, as you yourself well know. If I have broken the law and done something which I deserve the death penalty, I do not ask to escape it. But if there is no truth in the charges they bring against me, no one can hand me over to them. I appeal to the emperor. Then Festus, after conferring with his advisors, answered, You have appealed to the emperor, so to the emperor you will go. I'm going to end there. That's chapter 25. I ended in verse 12. That's the end of that part.